Well, good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us, and we're ready for another More Wild Talk with more, actually, here.
Got my job back.
How was the little staycation?
It's very boring. Very boring.
That's what you wanted, right?
But it was okay. It was fine. It was fine because it was nice to get some downtime. Yes.
Yeah, and Peyton filled in for you admirably.
Peyton did?
Yes.
Or Darian?
No, I'm talking about the sermon.
Oh, yes.
Darian filled in for you.
Yes. Okay.
More than admirably.
Yes.
I'm talking about Peyton filling in for you on the sermon. Yeah, Darian had you on the, and we'll have her back at some point in time because she knows what she's talking about.
Yeah, I know. I thought I was off for sure, but that's okay.
Now, so what's coming up? We're reopening. Everyone's going to be everybody that wants to come be in the building on Sunday. So we invite everyone who feels like they can get out to join us for worship in the building, and that's going to be exciting.
Yes,
that'll be cool. There's a video that you can access from our website and on the Facebook page that gives you the guidelines in video form. So you might want to check that out to see what the guidelines are when you show up. Some other things coming up. Just want to remind you about Clay's Lunch with Clay. He's doing a great series right now that is really pretty applicable to the things that are going on. So if you haven't caught that, he just finished number 2. He's got a third one coming up, I believe. You might want to check that out. And that's Lunch with Clay, also one of the videos you can access. We're going to have a testing company that's going to set up in the building on June 22nd, and free test for the COVID virus. And we have that set up. We want to offer that to everyone. We want to encourage everyone to take advantage of that. It'll give us a little indication after we've been here for 2 weeks to see how things are going with our church family. Mm-hmm. So that's a good deal. It won't cost you anything. You can sign up on the website. You can go there and sign up for an appointment, and it'll be right here at the building. That's June 22nd. Korean baseball.
I was watching some this morning. Not our team, but I was watching.
Well, here's the good news. I mean, I was ready to quit talking about them, but they went on a 4-game winning streak. That's our SK Wyrens. They went on a 4-game winning streak. They're 5-2 for the week. They only had 3 wins the whole first 3 weeks of the season.
Right.
5 wins this week, and so we're up to a big 8-18 record, and we're not in last place anymore.
Well, if you remember, was it the Nationals last year that
started
out real slow? So who knows?
And
maybe they're the destined.
It's not looking good for MLB. We might be stuck with Korean baseball.
I know.
So we gotta root for our team and get that going. And as you can see, we're in a new studio. How about that? We're moving up in the world, and we appreciate that. And
do you want to tell them why we're in a new studio?
No.
Okay.
No, I do not. I do not want to tell them no. Okay, so we want to get into. Our main topic is going to be about Christian education, but we had an interesting U.S. Supreme Court case this week concerning churches and the quarantine. So I thought I'd talk about that real quickly, because we talked before about the powers that governors have and states have in our federal system, particularly when there's health issues and health and safety issues, to make all kinds of rules and regulations, even though they may infringe on our rights under the Constitution. So we have rights under the Constitution, but they're not rights that are 100%. They can be infringed upon in certain situations, and this pandemic is one of them. So a church sued the governor of California because in coming out of the phase 1, I think, of the lockdown in California, he required the churches only to be allowed a 25% capacity in their building, and the other social distancing situations, and not more than 100 people. Yeah. So a church sued, and the Supreme Court upheld, basically upheld that situation, and that's probably what's going to happen because they're going to give deference to the governor. But it's interesting. It was a real short opinion. It's the kind of opinion that any of us can read. You don't even have to refer to the Old Testament to figure it out. You can just read it straight, and there you have it. But let me just talk about it real quick. The majority opinion indicated the state guidelines currently limit attendance at places of worship to 25% of building capacity, or a maximum of 100 attendees. Similar or more severe restrictions apply to comparable secular gatherings, including lectures, concerts, movie showings, spectator sports, and theatrical performances, where large groups of people gather in close proximity for extended periods of time. So what they're saying is the churches aren't singled out. They're being treated like other places. Now the dissent, though, points out, well, maybe not. And the dissent points out, well, there are some businesses subject to 25%, but look what isn't subject to that 25%. Factories, offices, supermarkets, restaurants, retail stores, pharmacies, shopping malls, pet grooming shops, bookstores, florists, hair salons, and cannabis dispensaries. And so, of course, the argument is, well, hey, if they're not subject to it, why would a church be subject to it?
Right.
But they lost. And like I say, you probably give some deference to a governor who has some kind of reasonable reason for why he's doing what he's doing. The further interesting point, of course, this was already set out, is now you see these protests going on.
Right.
And apparently now the governments don't care if a large group of people gather together in a large group, more than 10, 50, 20, 100, and that's okay.
Right.
Which would make it interesting to see if that suit came again, would there be a different situation? Because now they've indicated, well, maybe it's just kind of a political thing and not only based on health reasons.
Right.
Interesting.
Interesting to watch.
But we'll just move on. What we know is in Florida, we're good to go.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're good to go.
Absolutely.
We are good to go, and we will see those folks who want to be here on Sunday. All right, Christian education. And we want to talk about that a little bit because we think it has some applicability to a little bit of applicability we'll bring in at the end on what's going on in our world right now. And there's obviously what's going on in our world right now is going to impact those kind of things, not just Christian education, but maybe education generally.
Yes.
And across the board.
And we're sporting our Christian education.
Well, I was going to say we want to talk just generally about Church of Christ related schools, and we're not really here to promote any particular school or not.
Right.
We're just here to talk generally about it and not show any kind of partisan.
Well,
favor.
my money is sitting in 3 different schools, so
Yes.
I can tell you that.
Yeah. Okay. And we do want to focus kind of on the Church of Christ related schools. Obviously, there's a lot of schools that are religiously related. And go back a long way. But our tradition doesn't go back as far as like Harvard that started in the 1600s.
Correct.
Ours is a little more.
Our movement wasn't even around in the 1600s.
The Restoration movement wasn't around in that time. But it did come around, and then there were talks of schools, and that was kind of a controversy way back when.
Yeah, it really was. But it really wasn't in the very outset. For those who are familiar with the Restoration movement, you can actually Google it. But Alexander Campbell, he started his first school was called Buffalo Seminary.
Okay.
That was in 1818.
Must have been some buffaloes around.
Well, yeah, they had a mascot and a school name, I guess.
And Lipscomb's Bisons.
Lipscomb's Bisons and Harding's Bisons. So we're all
something
in
about Buffalo and Church of Christ.
It must be biblical.
Yes,
I don't know.
Yeah.
But it didn't run very well because at that particular time the movement was still going. Of course, I'm a kind of a history nerd, so let me do this for a little bit. But anyway, it didn't go very well because the movement was still going. They really need to spend their time in that direction. And so it kind of closed down. And then what many people are more familiar with is Alexander Campbell started another school called Bethany College. And that was in 1840. It was in 1840. So the spread of the gospel had kind of already gone through these areas now. And so all of a sudden there was this need for young people to have a place that they could get life principles with a biblical standpoint in their education. And that's really kind of how it started.
And that sounds reasonable.
Yeah.
That sounds like a good thing.
Right.
But there was controversy about that.
There was controversy. And the controversy really began middle 1800s, really more probably to the late 1800s. And there were some advocates against it. And one in particular really took on the scene. Daniel Summers was his name. And he had several debates with your guy, A.G. Harding, and also Brother Armstrong as well. And I think it was 1878, Summers wrote several articles against Christian schools. And that woke up a couple of sleeping giants, which was Lipscomb and Harding, David Lipscomb and A.J. Harding. They really started to combat it. And the controversy was, this group believed that all schools are worldly. They're worldly institutions, and they did not believe that you should give money that God has blessed you with to put into these organizations. And what I'm familiar with, even when I was a kid, is hearing about these non-institutional churches. And they're sometimes called anti-churches. They don't like that because what they're saying is they're anti-this and anti-that. But one of the things is they do not believe that Christians should support any institution with the exception of, or at least giving their money to, with the exception of, to the church institution or the home institution. And so they just believe that a congregation, now the big thing in my time was a congregation could not give money to these schools, but they could give individually as far as the non-institutional people go. But before that, it was really a hot topic, as you're going into the 1930s and 40s.
And I'm assuming they weren't against education per se. They
Right.
just believed that trying to mix the two would corrupt the Christian side of it.
Yeah,
kind of thing.
I think so. And to their defense, some of the things I read, there were a couple of things that there were some mistakes that were made by some of these earlier. Bethany College actually was one of those, and so out of that came a lot of the aggression. But yeah, Christian colleges were not. You would think that would be something we'd always be for, but that it was a real source of contention at one time.
And of course, going the other way, you really don't want to run a Christian college as a church.
Right.
So you do have some of that tension, I guess, both sides
Right.
of it. Too much secular or too much church.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. Well, interesting. But schools started, and if you get on Wikipedia and just search like Church of Christ related schools, there's like 30 of them listed. You don't realize there's that many.
No.
But there's 30 higher education schools, and of course there's tons of K through 12.
Yeah.
Church of Christ related schools.
Sure.
And so there's a lot of schools out there. And so what are some of the concerns? I'm on the board at Mount Dora Christian Academy and Children's Home. I'm on the board at Harding University. And there are just some concerns coming up for generally all schools, particularly private schools, and more particularly Christian-related schools, such as the Church of Christ affiliated school. So, first of all, what is the importance, do you think, Tracy, of Church of Christ-related schools to the church itself? And talking about our tradition, the Church of Christ. What would be the importance of colleges that are affiliated?
Yeah. I went to a Christian college, and of course, it had, one thing about going to Christian college of that comes from your same tradition is most of the people there are going to come from that tradition as well, although some things may vary. But you kind of understand each other. You kind of know where to go and or how things work. And I think that's one thing. But for me, I see it as a great place, to meet your future spouse.
Okay.
Which is where I found my
same faith,
spouse.
same faith tradition. Same, like you're saying, you're looking for that compatibility. Right. Well, I mean, the other thing too, I think, is of course we hired you to come preach here.
Right.
We didn't inquire with the Southern Baptist Seminary.
Right.
To find somebody.
Right.
But Church of Christ tradition being non-denominational and autonomous,
right.
There's no hierarchy like to assign a preacher for us, like you would
probably
see
even more important for us,
like you would see maybe in a Methodist church or something like that.
Right.
So one of the functions is to do those kind of things as far as preacher training.
Yes, and I went to Faulkner University in Montgomery, Alabama, and that's what I studied. I studied Bible there and met my wife there, and so I'm a big proponent of it.
So we need to be concerned about it, I think, as members of a Church of Christ, that there are institutions out there that are Church of Christ affiliated.
Sure.
I think that's important to us, notwithstanding the controversies that were way back when. I think we see the importance of these institutions. So what are some problems coming up for these churches?
Well, I would say one thing is what is the future attendance?
Mm-hmm.
Are attendance dropping?
Mm-hmm. Definitely there is. We've looked at the enrollments going down. Part of it being just the mere fact that there are less kids coming through high school and graduating high school. There's just less of a pool there. We also are aware of just the drop in the members of Churches of Christ nationally.
Right.
So you have that going down. I'm familiar with Harding. I think about around 3/4 is a good number that is members of the Churches of Christ that are attending there.
Right.
So pretty good cohort there.
Right.
But you have the church. We just see nationwide the church enrollment dropping, and so that pool's going down along with just generally the pool of people going down. So there's enrollment dropping kind of across the board.
Right.
For generally speaking, for most schools.
Now, why is there a population issue?
Well, one of the things you can look at is that was 9/11, 2001, and there was a drop in the fertility rate for a couple of years, maybe right there. I think that's what it looks like, and so therefore they're coming out of high school right now. The other thing too, though, is that I think more and more folks are looking at the fact: do I really need to go to college? Do I need to go away to a 4-year institution?
Right.
So you have that. And of course, you always have the problem of finances.
Yes.
It's tough to send your kid to a private high school and a private college. It's going to be a little more expensive than the state schools, and so that's an issue. And we can see in this last 3-4 months here in our country, that's going to be a big issue coming up in the fall. For a lot of people, and the financial situation, which in my mind, because I'm on the board of both of those places, some of us who are able to have the financial wherewithal need to be looking out and thinking about supporting students going to a Christian-based education, and helping them out in that situation, because there is going to be financial hardship.
Right.
And those places are always looking for help in that way.
I was at one church, and it's actually one of the elders there who was named after Faulkner University, but everyone who graduated from there that would go to Faulkner, he paid for their way.
That's perfect.
That's a great reason to have moved there. And
yeah.
if you have kids.
Yeah.
But that was one thing that he did. And I know, we certainly know of some folks that
We know of a lot of folks that step in there and help out in that way because they see the beauty and the goodness of a Christian education,
right.
In that way.
Right.
There's also, I think, don't you think, Tracy, there's also some thinking maybe, well, it's a Christian school, so the educational part of it isn't up to par like a regular institution.
Yeah, that's interesting because I do think some people, look at that and say, well, that degree's not going to count as much. Mm-hmm. I know where my youngest son is going at Lipscomb University. He's a business major, and that's the #1 business school in the whole state of Tennessee, which is pretty amazing when you think about Vanderbilt, University of Tennessee, and Memphis, and all those other schools that are there. So, no, I don't think, and I think some of it depends on your major too. I mean, some schools are going to be better than others. I mean, every Christian school has their strengths. Mm-hmm. So, but no, I don't think necessarily that's going to be the case.
Yeah. I mean, I think if you really look at it objectively, you can get the education you need at a Christian school, and they have good educational programs. I mean, it's obviously, like you're saying, Lipscomb's highly rated, and Tennessee Harding has that same reputation in their area. And I'm sure the other schools like Oklahoma Christian and Pepperdine and Abilene all have good reputations for what the product they're putting out.
And you and I both know this too, that who you become is not based on your degree. Mm-hmm. The degree gets you in a door, mm-hmm. but you see people who have degrees that others might think is better degree, but they never get as much as the potential as someone else, and I think that's one of the benefits of a Christian education, because you're not just learning about how to get these mental aspects, the intellectual, but you're also learning a lot about life mm-hmm. and people, and I think that helps you along the way.
Yeah, we would definitely see that a Christian worldview mixed in with your education is going to be a benefit for you as you go forward in the world and in the business world, or in whatever profession you end up in.
Right.
That's going to be a big difference, I think, in how you're the success that you have.
Yeah.
I also think we've gotten into a little bit of thinking that really what school is for is I need to get some knowledge so I can get a job. Period.
Right.
And so you're just kind of looking, what's the cheapest and fastest way I can get to this goal and get out and get a job, and missing the opportunity to participate in a liberal arts education with that community effect of a school, and going away from home mm-hmm. and making that transition to that mature adulthood, and you lose sight of the benefit of that. Which is, you can't really put too much of a dollar sign on it, but it's definitely worth something.
Right.
It's definitely worth something. So, maybe a little bit more education, or a little bit more, I guess, educating people that the education here is pretty good.
Yeah.
And it includes more than just giving you some knowledge.
Sure.
Yeah. So, why we kind of talked a little bit about it, but why do we need this?
What's that, Christian?
Yeah. Why do we need that? Why do we need to continue to support it?
Well, I for me, when I've got 4 kids. I've got one that's gone through Christian college, Oklahoma Christian, and then I've got one that's in college, and another one that's going to Lipscomb, and one thing I know about kids at that age is they're trying to make life decisions. They're out on their own for the first time, and to be able to have some good direction, because a lot of these teachers in these Christian schools, they become mentors to these kids.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And it's not even a matter of, I know you've talked about, I can't remember who it was, but I know they'll like bring kids to their house, and that's the kind of stuff you don't necessarily get at other schools, and that is just something a little bit extra that you get there. But it's also you get to see them in this environment and see them as a Christian, and that you can work out in the world, but you can continue to live by a Bible-based worldview.
Yeah, I mean, as parents, we've raised our kids with certain values.
Right.
And it's great to be able to send them to a place that's going to affirm our values and continue to help them mature into those values.
Right.
And like you're saying, there's no doubt. I mean, we can all look at what's going on with large universities and public universities, and what happens on those campuses is nowhere near what we would want to happen, around our kids. That doesn't mean you can't go to one of those places and get hooked into a campus ministry and all that, but we're talking about, a place that the whole thing is about it.
Yeah, because you can go to a state university and you can get involved in these Christian student centers, but you're right, as far as what you're hearing every day and you're hearing about your profession and about life is more than likely it's not going to be a biblical worldview. So yeah, that's the benefit of a Christian education, if you can.
Yeah, and I've got a quote from James Harding from the Lipscomb Catalog in 1896.
Ooh.
That kind of talks, kind of puts it all together as far as that's concerned. We purpose to present in the way of a liberal education as extensive a curriculum as can be found in any school, college, or university in the land, and at the same time to thoroughly drill its students in the Bible, the divine source of wisdom and goodness. It was not our design to make professional preachers, but to train males and females, young and old, all who might become members of the school for the greatest usefulness in life. Each student is left to choose his own calling. I think, he's pointing out we want to turn out better citizens for our community, better citizens in the earthly kingdom or worldly kingdom, and also better citizens in Jesus's kingdom.
Absolutely.
And so that's a great look at that. Kind of want to end on one of the big concerns that we should have about Christian education, and it's really more big concerns about just being Christians in this country is the attack really on our core beliefs. Yeah. And in many ways, and many things that we do, starting to feel that attack. But most specifically with schools, we're really seeing some, if you want to call it heat, placed on some of these schools because they call us discriminatory and homophobic, and all those kind of things are coming down on our heads, so to speak. And so that's kind of tough, and it's kind of scary for those of us who are involved in these schools. What's happened in Florida just recently, we have a scholarship program called the Step Up Scholarship Program, and it provides scholarships to needy children, and it's like vouchers given to the parents, and they can pick whatever school they want to go to with those vouchers, and that helps out kids who are needy, that need maybe extra help in school, and so can get into a private school that can give better instruction on a more one-to-one basis. Also for those who have some kind of disabilities and things like that. Well, somebody, they started going around saying, well, some people are taking these vouchers and they're going to Mount Dora Christian Academy. And Mount Dora Christian Academy is a Christian school that thinks that, some of these sexual practices are wrong and don't support those kind of things. And this Step Up program is funded by corporations in the state of Florida. Instead of paying their state taxes, they're allowed to divert some of it to this program to help kids. Well, some of these corporations, after people gave them a hard time, that are the ones that we would call on the other side, have withdrawn from the program and aren't putting money in. And it's not like, the money is going to the parents. The parents are deciding where the kid's going. And they make that decision, but they don't want those parents to make that decision because they might make the decision to support a Christian school.
Right.
And that's pretty sad. And some of the bigger corporations like Wells Fargo have pulled out, and I think Rosen Hotels over in Orlando have pulled out of that program, and that's discouraging. For instance, Mount Dora Christian Academy, I think last year got, students were helped to the tune of about $1 million in their helping them with tuition. So we need to keep an eye on that. That needs some prayer, I think, in that situation. Well,
and your buddy Steve Lake has joined on here from Harding. So.
Cool. Hey, Steve.
Now,
maybe we could just announce that we appreciate him sponsoring tonight's episode.
That would be great. Actually, if I've still got a daughter, hasn't gone to school yet. It'd be great if they could just sponsor one of my children.
Yeah,
that'd be great.
Yeah. Get on that, Steve.
Get on it, Steve.
All right. Well, we are about to the end of our discussion, and we do want to mention, we don't have time to talk about what's going on in our country right now, really. That's not the purpose of our show tonight. But we do need to make note that of the things that are going on, the terrible thing that happened in Minneapolis, and of course, we need to pray that the justice system works how it's supposed to work, and apparently it's going that way right now. He's been fired and arrested, and he'll have a trial if he wants one, and that's how it should work. But we need to be thinking and praying about solutions to some of these problems. We always hear in this situation that we need to have a discussion, and we need to have this and that. And normally when someone says they want to have a discussion, they mean I want you to agree with me. Yeah. They don't really want to have a discussion and look at the facts, but it's really time that we get down and look at the facts of what's going on, find out what the true facts are, because that's going to help you find some solutions. On the other hand, we know what the true solution is. And that's part of, this Christian education. The more of these citizens we can turn out that have been educated in a Christian institution with a Christian worldview, with the love of Jesus in their heart, the better off we're going to be. The better off we're going to be in this world. God, I can ask my IT guy. Do I have time for a couple minutes? Thank you, Peyton. Appreciate that. Well, I'm gonna read a portion of a sermon that was given in 1957 in Montgomery, Alabama, at a Baptist church. You can probably guess who gave the sermon. But in any event, I'm just going to read part of it because I think it kind of it has a lot of applicability to what's going on right now. And I'm not reading the whole sermon, obviously, or else we'd be here another hour, I think. And I'm not going to be able to do it in his cadence.
Right.
I want to turn your attention to the subject of loving your enemies. It is a love that seeks nothing in return. It is an overflowing love. It's what theologians would call the love of God. Love. When you rise to love on this level, you begin to love men, not because they are likable, but because God loves them. Look at every man and love him because you know God loves him, though he might be the worst person you've ever seen. There are a lot of people I find difficult to like. I don't like what they do to me. I don't like what they say about me. I don't like their attitudes. I don't like some of the things they're doing. I don't like them, but Jesus said to love them. Just keep loving people. Keep loving them, even though they're mistreating you. A person who is a neighbor or a person who is doing something wrong to you. Just keep being friendly to that person. Keep loving them. Don't do anything to embarrass them. Just keep loving them. And by the power of your love, they will break down under the load. So this morning, as I look in your eyes and into the eyes of all my brothers in Alabama and all over America and all over the world, I say to you, I love you. And I would rather die than hate you. And of course, you probably have guessed it's Dr. Martin Luther King. And I think he's probably preaching out of Romans chapter 12. Bless those who persecute you, bless and do not curse them. Rejoice with those who rejoice, weep with those who weep. Live in harmony with one another. Do not be haughty, but associate with the lowly. Never be wise in your own sight. Repay no one evil for evil, but give thought to do what is honorable in the sight of all. If possible, so far as it depends on you, live peaceably with all. Beloved, never avenge yourselves, but leave it to the wrath of God, for it is written, vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord. To the contrary, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he is thirsty, give him something to drink, for by doing so you will heap burning coals on his head. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. And I think we're to the end of our...
It's a great way to end.
Yeah, amen.
Great way to end.
We will see you next week on More Wild Talk. I think Tracy will be back next week, right? You're not going to abandon me again.
No.
Not for a while.
No.
Okay. We'll see you next week, but we're first going to see you Sunday morning here at the building.
Yeah.
We look forward to that. Good night.